Piers Morgan, the bold and sometimes controversial British journalist, has slammed transgender athletes' participation in women's sports, terming it as grotesquely unfair. He said this during an appearance on Gains for Girls podcast, where he proposed that biological women should boycott events with trans athletes altogether. Appearing on the Gains podcast on November 2023, he told the host, former NCAA Division I swimmer Riley Gaines, that while some world sports governing bodies have implemented bans on trans athletes in women's sports, a boycott would prompt the biggest change.
Right now, every female competitor in women's sport in the world should just refuse to compete against trans athletes. Not because they're transphobic, because they want to protect women's rights to fairness. And if they all did that one day, this ends.
I 100% agree. And I didn't agree for the longest time. I thought women shouldn't have to boycott, but I can proudly say I've changed my mind on that. That is what it's going to take. That's what we need to see. And you're right. Courage is contagious. I certainly believe that. But so is hopelessness. And so I think if we remain hopeless, like we're seeing so many women, so many people do, that's just as contagious as courage.
Morgan said separately that his issue with the participation of trans athletes in women's sports is primarily focused on what it means for women's rights. Piers continued to say, "In every sport now, you're seeing this creeping erosion of women's rights to fairness and equality. I have no problem with trans people. Suppose people want to transition or identify as something they weren't born as, fine. But what you can't do in your pursuit of your own rights to fairness and equality is erode women's fairness and equality rights. And that's what we're seeing, and it has to stop."
Women's rights to fairness and equality should trump stupid allegations of being transphobic. I have no problem with any trans people. I wish them all the very best. I want them to have fairness and equality in their lives. Absolutely. But not when it erodes women's rights to fairness and equality. That is just unfair and unequal.
Earlier this month, a prominent American-Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu league, the North American Grappling Association, announced that biological men who have transitioned will no longer be allowed to compete in female divisions in order to maintain fairness for female athletes. The American-Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu League cited other sports governing organizations, including World Rugby, which banned transgender athletes from competing in women's events back in 2020. The latest policy, according to the organization's website, cites concern for player welfare and the physical advantages. Since then, several international organizations have followed suit. Over the summer, the International Governing Body for Swimming announced plans to create an open category more than a year after a new policy effectively banned trans athletes from competing in women's events. As Piers Morgan says, if you allow people who were born biologically male to put their hand up and say they're women and want to compete in women's sports, they are going to destroy women born with biological bodies. Do you agree with Piers Morgan that biological women should boycott trans sports? We would love your feedback on this matter and whether you feel it's fair or unfair to biological women. Thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, feel free to subscribe to our channel Fitness Fusion X2 for more sports-related content. See you in the next video.